And you're all set.
Great, thank you. I call the August 10th, 2022 meeting of the Southborough Personnel Board to order. First order of business is approval of the minutes, which were circulated prior to the meeting. Anyone have any changes or corrections to the minutes? Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, Mr. Thorburn,
Aye.
Mr. Zinsky,
Aye.
Mr. Malinowski,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. The minutes are approved. Next in the packet is the expenditure ledger. We haven't spent anything yet, although we have committed $5,000 to the salary survey. Any questions, comments on the expenditure ledger?
No.
Okay, moving on to the town administrator report, Mr. Purple.
Mr. Chair, would you like me, I don't have the agenda in front of me. Would you like me to talk a little bit about the Collins study at this point?
Yes.
Okay, so just a quick update for the paying class study that the Collins Center is doing. Melanie has been on a daily basis shepherding with Collins Center they have all of the revised or updated job descriptions from people. They have a list of about 25 people that they want to talk to. Some of them are department heads to understand some of the things that were submitted from their departments. Some of them are the employees directly. And those are being conducted via Zoom the week of August 22nd and August 29th. They are currently scheduling people. I'm not sure if they've got everybody scheduled out yet. Probably about 15 to 30 minutes each to answer any questions, or if they saw some discrepancies versus what people are saying they do versus what the job descriptions are saying that they do. There were some revisions that the consultant also made to the list of comparable communities. We still have 16 of them, but on the original list, Auburn, Concord, Littleton, Medfield, Medway, and Westwood were removed, and Hudson, Marlborough, Sherburne, Shrewsbury, and Stowe were added.
And Framingham as well.
I'm sorry, and Framingham as well. So the final list now, our comparable communities are Ashland, Framingham, Grafton, Holliston, Hopkinton, Hudson, Marlborough, Maynard, Northborough, Sherburne, Shrewsbury, Stowe, Sudbury, Wayland, and Westborough. And so Collins Center is moving forward in looking at those communities as to how they stack up against the positions in our paying classification study. So hopefully at your next meeting, we'll have another, we should keep this on as a regular item. We'll have an update at the next meeting. The interview should be completed, and we can get a better idea of next steps in the process from Collins Center.
Thanks, Mark. Any questions about what they're doing or the revisions to the list of comparable towns? John?
Go ahead, Jason.
Go ahead, John.
Oh, okay. I think, how can we be compared to the city of Framingham? How can they consider that a comparable community?
I think that it's not simply the size of the community and some of those pieces, John, do also with proximity. We're competing with them for the same types of positions, the same types of jobs. So, I understand we've got Marlborough next to us, we've got Framingham next to us. But we are competing with them for the same jobs, and we need to make sure that we've got a level of competitiveness, with them.
Okay.
Jason?
I had basically the same question. It sounded like we were population was not as much of a factor, and I just was basically confirming what John was thinking.
Yeah,
Collins Center had talked about putting Nantucket in, but I said no. I said I'm not sure there's an apples to apples there.
Yeah, but I think Mark is right based on my conversation. It's really a combination of towns, cities and towns that sort of look like us, but also cities and towns that we would compete with for talent that would be geographically close to us. So that's my understanding as well. So,
I mean, a lot of times, we look at positions and, and I give Vanessa, here's the boxes to check off to get this employee to, this prospective candidate to come and be part of our team. And it's quality of life. And, but if somebody's looking at a job here and in Framingham and the pay is so disparate, travel and quality of life issues may be less of an issue. And really the issue is going to end up being money. So we need to at least be cognizant of what's around us, but again, I understand the point.
and keep in mind, it's just one sort of data point. Well, two, if you think of Marlborough,
Right.
but we also have these other smaller towns that are more in line with our size to look at. So it may skew things slightly, but we certainly can balance that out. Okay, nothing else for Mark. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
Moving on to Assistant Town Administrator Report, Vanessa.
Sure. So in your packet is your monthly update on the staff transitions. Amy Townsley has actually just tendered her resignation. She's taken a job in another community. In addition to that, last night, I'm happy to report that the selectmen appointed a part-time local building inspector, which is a new position for us this year to help out the building commissioner, as well as a new business assistant to the ZBA who works under the purview of the building department. So both of them were appointed last night by the Board of Selectmen. Select Board.
And I should note, we will be talking about the local inspector compensation later in the meeting.
Yes.
Any questions or comments for Vanessa?
I just have a comment. I'm just going to go back to last year when we were talking about the tuition reimbursement policy. I don't know the circumstances, nor do I think it'd be appropriate to talk about why Ms. Townsley's leaving town, but she was the only employee that took tuition reimbursement last year, and I raised a concern about retention when we were going through the policy. We just paid it within the last 1 to 2 months. I have no idea whether that tuition in class led to the position or not, but I do think this board needs to consider what we do this year, given kind of, unfortunately, the proof of concept that just unfolded.
Okay, fair. Anything else? Okay, thank you, Vanessa. Moving on to item 5, old business, revisions to section 11, working group update. Mr. Malinowski.
So I just wanted to, again, go on record and commend the employees that have been collaborating with Dorian and myself. They've been productive meetings. We had a meeting in, I'll call it mid to late July, where we talked through a framework of what could potentially be brought forward to the personnel board and ultimately town meeting. And I'll walk through, some highlights of that in a moment. But what that really led to was a need for a discussion with Kate Federoff as our town labor counsel, because a lot of it came down to how that could and should be implemented, especially if we do make any changes to vacation, given that that is a protected benefit regardless of the means of separation that someone has in the future from the town. So we were finally able to get on Kate's schedule last week. It was Friday, actually. So this is pretty fresh news. And we talked through a series of options that we will have related to, I don't like this term, the grandfathering, right? In terms of being able to give potential choice to employees that don't want to elect into the new system, but obviously make any new system that we put into place effective for any employee after a certain date. We talked through mechanisms of how you would implement that. So there's a lot of detail there that I don't think is appropriate to bring forward without a presentation or a memo. But what I can say, the conversation led us to is that this should not be rushed into for a fall town meeting, there are mechanisms that we don't have to give as much advance notice as I think we were thinking, because there are provisions to make people whole and give them choices. And I think that was candidly a pleasant surprise for me, because I think what we've learned through the working group is, while 80 or 90% of the people may want one option, there certainly will be naturally different people in different spots, which is why we're trying to get a good representative sample. So what my recommendation would be, hearing both the employee feedback and labor council's feedback, is that we not intend to bring anything forward at the fall special town meeting, but instead, and Barry, this will probably go into the next point on employee handbook, think about a more holistic review of the SAP in general for the spring, and potentially that any of these changes be covered by policy and not by bylaw. Because I think one of the things that we're intending and hopefully able to do is to allow the town to be competitive to both attract and retain talent in our government organization. And I think we've seen the byproduct of the pitfalls of the existing framework, because it takes town meeting to change it. And Mr. Purple and this board have very little optionality in terms of what benefits, salaries, et cetera, can be offered. It has to fit in within certain criteria. So we are trying to think about that more holistically. Now, to kind of the summary of where we may be headed is, we are not intending at this point any sort of changes to the existing sick leave, whether it be accrual, carryover, or payout upon retirement. I think what this board is going to have to consider is whether we do something for new employees. And then on the vacation side, we are looking at incremental vacation for almost all groups, other than those that are already in the 5 and 6 week bucket. So there would be a class of employees with 3 weeks, a class of employees with 4 weeks, and a class of employees with 5 weeks is the framework we've been working under. And we're working through various iterations of that. But the key change would be, if we, that employees would have the ability to opt into a system where it would be granted on the first day of the fiscal year. So one of the main things that we have heard is that people bank their vacation because they don't know, they want to plan for that big trip, or they always want to have something there in case something happens. By granting on the first day of the fiscal year and allowing a little bit of carryover, we're working with a framework of about 2 weeks at this point. We would be able to kind of accomplish what everyone's looking to accomplish on the employee side, while also dealing with some of the reasons why we're investigating this in the first place and exploring it. But we also think it's appropriate to think about this as a way to attract talent and retain talent moving forward. So we're gonna have to put together a slide deck, but I think that the big thing that I at least would like to hear some conversation about, Barry, is whether everyone hearing my update is ready to kind of pull back on the fall and work towards a more holistic update in the SAP in the spring, knowing that this still can be accomplished through policy, or if we end up in bylaw, we can still accomplish it there too. It's just gonna be more complicated.
Yeah, I was in on the call with Kate Federoff, and I think this is, I think Jason and I see this the same way, that, and I've been moving towards pushing more and more things to policy, handbook, and getting as much as we reasonably could out of the SAP for the reasons Jason cited. So I'm certainly in favor of going that route, and I don't really see any need to sort of rush this to get something done, particularly since, as we think about this, there can be all kinds of permutations. And how does this affect one employee? What's what situation could arise that we haven't thought about. I think giving ourselves more time to sort of think through those alternative situations so we're not caught off guard by someone saying, oh, I'm much worse off now because of this. And so I think more time works to our benefit for a lot of reasons, but open it up to Dorianne, John.
I agree. I think we're better off waiting and trying to work things out with more time. I wouldn't be in favor of pushing this for the fall.
John?
Oh, I definitely think it should wait till the spring.
Okay. So we're all on the same page on that. That's the good news. Did you want to get any thoughts on the substance, or you want to hold off, Jason, on that?
I mean, if you have any, I know I did it all verbally. I mean, if you, I'm happy to hear thoughts from you and John in particular, because you haven't been in those meetings. If you have any, happy to listen to them now. Otherwise, what I think Dorian and I were planning was to have a update meeting with the working group next week, just to give them more the finer details of where we're at, and then kind of chart that path forward. But this grandfathering concept had been one thing that they had been very, I don't know if I would say they've been very focused on it, on whether that was an option. And I think there is an option around it. I think there's also a financial component to it that Brian's doing some homework on that we need to be able to quantify too. So if you have any thoughts, I'm all ears. I'm sure Dorian is all ears, but we owe you a more formal presentation once we get, all of the things in a row.
Okay, I sort of just have a general question. So right now, our vacation schedule in terms of how much an employee gets per year is pretty much in line with what we saw from the prior list of comparable towns. In other words, they all, I think, start with 2 weeks, go up to 5. We have a class that goes to 6 as well. We were out of line on the accrual. We were more generous, I think, than pretty much all the other towns in what we were allowing employees to accrue. What we seem to be doing is bringing ourselves more in line on the accrual side, but then becoming more generous on the granting of vacation. And was that done? And I get that the motivation is in terms of acquiring and holding on to talent. Although I will say I haven't seen any evidence that we've either lost people because of vacation or been unable to hire because of vacation. Is it so is it just our feeling that that will help, or is it sort of a trade-off that, okay, we're taking something away from employees in terms of accrual, but we're sort of easing it by giving them more on vacation? I'm just trying to sort of understand what the motivation is for the change.
Jason? Did we lose him? Jason, you there? I think we lost him.
Yeah, he looks frozen. And I hope my question didn't cause that.
Yeah, we lost him.
Well, I think
He'll be back.
hopefully he's coming back.
I would just consider that a win, Barry, and move on.
Mark, you're gonna get in trouble.
He's not back yet, is he?
No. That's why I'm not saying anything either, because I don't want to say something and have to repeat it.
Is he just that shocked by the question?
That's a good question. John, you jinxed us when you said the internet went down.
um, let's give him one more try.
Vanessa, let him in.
Maybe he doesn't even know he's gone.
No, he knows.
I should have mentioned, and I mentioned this to Jason, we have a prospective new member who I had hoped would be on board for this meeting, but due to factors beyond my control, the person is not, but I'm optimistic will be for our next meeting.
There he is.
There we go.
Are you back?
Were you so
I am.
taken aback with my question, Jason?
So I think I heard 75% of it, Barry. I got the general gist. I don't know if Dorianne replied while I was gone though.
I did not. I did not do that. I
She
waited.
took cover.
I took cover.
So Barry, I think here's my general motivation by thinking through this is because we're going to be limiting how much can be carried and realizing that we have a wide variety within our town. Like we have, I believe it's 9 employees that have 6 weeks of vacation right now. And then we have others with 2. While tenure is important, and while tenure certainly should get you additional benefits over time, at least what my personal experience has been in a variety of organizations is that there's not usually a tremendous difference between like that much of a difference, like that 4 week sort of difference. And then when we looked at certain employee situations, right, I think this board is very aware that we've entertained a lot of 3-week sort of requests very recently. And that's all based on the advocacy of the hiring board or authority, right? Like a lot of times it's the select board, so Mark's bringing it forward, but other times, right, planning, right? Like we've seen many different, and it just felt playing field that, you know, these employees should get the public holidays that they get off, plus have a minimum of 3 weeks to recharge in any way, shape, or form. So if we were expanding the top end, right? If we were taking some of our 5-week employees to 6 weeks, that I think would be completely off from what some of the other communities are. But I think this 3-week is candidly a sweetener to a deal that like Mark could use from trying to attract the talent to Southborough over Community B. And in all of these positions, there is no replacement cost, right? So I'm sure Mark thinks about this when he does union contracts. There is a replacement cost to any time off. On these, this is just how do you get the right amount of productivity from your employees? So that was some of the basis for that.
Okay. And I don't want my comment to suggest I'm necessarily opposed to it, but I do have that issue in my mind as we always try to sort of see where we are compared to the other communities that we look at. So, okay, go ahead.
I would say a very different world right now. And if we're following someone's policy that they adopted 2-3 years ago, we're not going to hire the right people. And I guess discussion was to try to be ahead.
You're
What
breaking up.
everyone, public and private now.
Okay, but there are 14 other communities we look at who have a vacation schedule that's virtually identical to ours. So they may or may not be moving. I don't know. But again, we can have a fuller discussion of this once you've got everything lined up in terms of what you want to do and see where we go. But I think we try to be mindful both on the compensation and benefits side of, we want to be competitive. We don't necessarily want to be, our goal is not to be the highest, but to be competitive. Yep, we lost Jason again. There you go, you're back. All right, any other comments at this point?
No,
Okay, and really appreciate the work that the working group has done, the time they put in and the ideas they're coming up with. So I guess I would just say keep up the good work. Very much appreciated. All right, moving on to new business. Review of the draft employee handbook. I'm sure you've all reviewed it in detail since you got it. First of all, thank you, Vanessa and Melanie, both for the time and effort you put into this. And so we all understand this is sort of just a first draft. This is not intended to be anything close to a final product. And there's a lot in here that I like, and a lot of policies that I think the town should have that are here. I think many of them for the first time. I could be wrong, but certainly there are policies I've never seen before in here, and I think that's a good thing. The trick will be how we mesh this together with the SAP. As we're talking on the benefit side, instead of just referencing Section 11, I'd love to take it all out and just have it be in here. One thing we have to think about that struck me, and it's at the very end of the document when it talks about revisions. It's on the next to last page, maybe. Repeal and amendment. It says it can be repealed or amended by the personnel board, but there's a lot in here that's sort of outside the personnel board's purview, like health insurance, dental insurance. We don't have the authority, as far as I understand it, to determine what the town will pay versus what employees will pay. So I don't think we can give ourselves by this document the right to do that. So I think we just have to think about, maybe we say personnel board or other authorized authority, something like that, because some of these things, select board, maybe advisory, others need to have input in beyond what we can do. And even on a lot of the policies, we don't promulgate a number of these policies. The FMLA policy, the non-discrimination policy, a lot of those things come through either Mark as personnel director or other places. So we just have to think through that. That one just struck me that we have to give that further thought about who's going to have the right to change the document. So the question arises, sort of how we move forward on this. I'm not sure at this point it makes sense for us to go through provision by provision with our collective thoughts. I'm not sure that's a good use of all of our time. On the other hand, I certainly want everyone to feel like they have input into this. So I'm open to suggestions. My initial thought is to have a working group, such as we're doing on benefits, focusing on this. And I would suggest we wait until we see the benefits piece of it, so we know what that's going to be. But and I would like to be part of the working group on this document, and would welcome someone else, if anyone else is interested in volunteering, to work with Vanessa and Mark on taking this to the next step.
I'll do it.
Okay, John. Thank you.
And Barry, I was thinking working group too, so I completely agree with you, John, taking the lead on that. I would just caution you, don't wait for, I don't think you need to wait for the vacation and sick, like that's 1 to 2 sections of a 50-ish plus page document. Dorian and I can help fill in that piece specifically, but there's so many other sections here. And then I would just think that if you were to get a handbook in place, much like Vanessa brings a listing of departures and new hires every meeting, if Mark felt the need for something that's within his control, like benefits, to make an update, he can just inform the personnel board at the next meeting, hey, we had to update benefits here, this section, because of this reason. And then the personnel board can easily then just say, not in our purview, move along. Or if there's something, you may be able to almost color code, not necessarily for public, like in the public version that gets posted eventually, but on the side, like these sections require personnel board approval versus these sections are within kind of the control of the personnel director. And then that way there's a clear rules of the road of, what can be adjusted. Now, my guess is once you get a working document, you're not going to be making many changes, absent law changes, et cetera. But I think we need to obviously get going, and I don't want the vacation thing because I think we'll be able to help with that, but I don't want that to slow anything else down because I think it's one very small section, albeit important.
Okay. And just thinking out loud, we may want to put in the SAP that there will be an employee handbook, and any revisions to the handbook have to be presented to the personnel board, something along those lines. But just so it's clear that there is a requirement along the lines of what you described. Other thoughts or comments?
I'd appreciate a printed copy. If I copy 56 pages on my printer, I'll be up to Staples buying a new.
I'll take care of that for you, John, today.
Thank you.
I did want to just add that this is based on a template from Attorney Fedoroff, our labor counsel, although there are pieces of it that are new for Southborough, as you noted. I wanted to just make sure the board was comfortable with this kind of format and framework. The chair and I spoke about, there are areas where I've inserted a link to a policy that's on our website instead of, attaching the entire policy. If I did that for all these various policy, this thing would be several hundred pages long, whenever we did print it, although we hope to keep much of it in a digital format. So it's basically, a shell of what we're working on and we're plugging along. And Attorney Fedoroff I've had a lot of conversations with her about bits and pieces of it, but she has not seen our full draft yet. We wanted to get feedback from the board first.
John?
Mark, how other communities that have these handbooks, do they come into play when somebody complains, or do they compare what their working conditions are to the what the handbook says or anything, in other words, does it become a real working document?
I think it becomes, I think it becomes, guidelines for how we do and what we do. There's always going to be interpretation. There's always going to be things that you like in principle, and then you put them in practice and you say, geez, I didn't realize that was going to work out that way. I didn't think that was going to. So I think it's a living document, John, that is something that we're going to have to continue to update and to tweak. And things are going to change, circumstances are going to change, employment practices are going to change, and it's not going to be something that you're going to do and you're going to celebrate, and then in 10 years maybe we'll take another look at it. I think it's something that we're going to constantly have to look at, the same way that this board looks at the SAP every year and makes little tweaks, makes adjustments and things like that. So it's going to be that same type of document.
And I think the key is right now, if an employee has a question, I'm not sure exactly where they go to look, but this will be a document where employee has a question, they know employee handbook is where at least they need to start. And most of the answers hopefully will be in the employee handbook, and they don't need to call Vanessa, they don't need to call it's there for them in one place. And so that's sort of the goal. And as we discussed, the other benefit for us is it gives us flexibility to do things without having to go through the mechanism of town meetings. So
I go, excuse me, I go back, when I first became fire chief, there was the town council was an old Yankee lawyer from Concord. And he told me I wanted to revise, do a lot of stuff. And he puts his hand on my shoulder and he says, Chief, he says, the less in writing, the better. And, in this litigious society and whatnot, you've got contracts, you've got this, and I have concerns that this is just another document in writing that somebody can hang their hat on, and I'm leery.
well, I guess the answer to that is virtually all of this is somewhere now. We mentioned there are a lot of policies that are new here, but a lot of these policies, they exist now. It's just finding them, or they're in the SAP now. So it's not like we're creating a lot of new writings. Right? That's not the primary goal, although there is some. It's just, let's put it all in one place. And, my experience in doing this for many, many years, and obviously Kate agrees that there is a benefit. The net benefit is for the town to have a document like this. There are risks. There's language in the personal policies, the handbook to mitigate that risk, but you're better off letting employees know what the rules are than having them be nebulous and have people have different sets of rules in different circumstances. So, my view is on balance, you're better off having a document like this. But again, reasonable people can disagree.
I agree with Barry.
So, okay, anything else on the handbook before we move on? Seeing nothing. Moving on to local inspector compensation, there is a memo in the package from Laurie Lavoli on this, as well as the CV from the person who has been hired by the town to fill this position, and a request that we pay well above midpoint here at $43 an hour. Is Laurie with us?
Yep, I can bring her over.
What is the midpoint right now, Barry? Do you have that chart in front of you?
Yeah, I do have it. It's like 40. Huh? Well, the minimum is $30.01 and the max is 45.01. So the midpoint would be 37.50 or so.
So we're looking to bring the person almost up to the maximum amount of money.
Right. You know, you can hear, we can't see you, Laurie, which is not critical. But we have the memo. Do you want to go into sort of how you came up with the $43 figure?
Yes, hi, good morning. How are you?
Great.
You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, Ray has been in the industry for about 40 plus years. He's been in the municipal industry close to 20. He has recently retired as a building commissioner and he still wants to pursue a part-time position. I've worked with him in the past. He's very knowledgeable. He knows the building codes very well. And he will be a very good asset to the town. That being said, it's very difficult at this point to try and get people to be in an inspector's position. There's many jobs available throughout the Commonwealth. So for us to be able to have this transition for him, having just being recently retired and knowing his capabilities, him working for me before, me working with him before, I feel that he should be paid well above the minimum, or else we may not be able to lose the opportunity.
Okay, but the figure of $43, where did that come from? Was that just your best guess at what, given his experience, he should receive, or where did that figure come from?
I honestly wanted to give him the maximum, but just in some discussions with Mark and a couple of people, we just felt that if we did it and then have a little bit more reason to growth. So no rhyme or reason exactly, just based on his experience and where he's at now and what his pay is and what an inspector's job is. We also went initially when we did the categories with other locals in the other cities and towns. This was a figure that worked with other cities and towns also for the part-time position, because there are no benefits to them, obviously.
Okay, questions for Laurie? John?
Did I hear earlier that the selectmen hired this man last night?
They voted to appoint him
Yes.
last evening, John. The approval for the pay rate is contingent upon the personnel board approval because it would be above the midpoint.
Okay, I thought we were talking around in a circle if you already hired him at $43.
It just happened to work out. This was the next two meetings.
Other questions or comments? Jason?
Yeah, I strongly support this. I think the resume speaks for itself. The person that we're speaking about candidly has the credentials, right, that we require of Laurie's position. And when I think about what the demands are of her position, Lori can now go on a vacation and actually have someone competent. I think we saw what happened in town last week. That requires the building inspector to be involved too. And I just think I sleep easier at night as a resident of town, knowing that there's someone that's incredibly competent coming back. The other thing I think we also need to think about is that this is basically funded by fees, right? So this is not, well, it's a new position. We heard a lot about this in the spring when we talked about the job description that Lori brought forward. I'm just thrilled with the qualifications of the individual, and I just think we'd be making a silly mistake not to look at this. The other thing I did do is I just looked at where the building inspector position is on a full-time basis, and this is actually well within that range. I know we're looking at the part-time schedule, not the full-time schedule, but I do think there are some comparisons that could be drawn there to get you a little comfortable. And I also just wonder if our part-time schedule, which the Collins Center will probably help us figure out, needs a band 6 moving forward as well. So that's all I got.
Anyone else? Leanne?
I'm fully in
Thank
support of this. I wouldn't want to lose this individual. I also am very impressed with the resume, so I would be fully in support of this.
John?
Where's this gentleman live and his availability? I know a lot of times we're looking for the part-time inspector on a weekend or something, when something occurs, and is he close by, available?
He lives about 40 minutes away or so, 45, depending on the time of day.
Say Hudson?
No, he's about 40 minutes away, 45. It's in
Okay,
Drake.
okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I agree. He is definitely an asset. Will be an asset. Thank you for your support.
Before we vote, just in the interest of full disclosure, Laurie was in my house inspecting a renovation a couple of weeks ago. So it's not influencing my vote. And I think it was before this issue came up. So just want to be clear on the record. Is there a motion to set a pay rate of $43 per hour for Mr. Matty?
So moved.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Do roll call vote. Mr. Thorburn,
Aye.
Ms. Jazinski,
Aye.
Mr. Malinowski.
Aye.
The chair votes aye. It's unanimous. It's approved.
Thank you.
Thank you, Laurie.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye, Lori.
Okay, moving on to the next item. This is really just a technical item, but I thought we should actually have to formally approve it. And it's just bringing 2 library employees up to the minimums for their job grade. And as you can see from Vanessa's memo at Bates 51, it's 1 penny for one person and 27 cents an hour for another. And I think we need to have people at least at the minimum. So is there any discussion on this? If not, I will entertain a motion to increase Marjorie O'Neill's compensation from $12.59 to $12.86 per hour, and Claudia Roach from $12.85 to $12.86, effective July 1.
So
Effective-
moved.
Yes, this would be retroactive to July 1st.
Yep, so moved.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote. Mr. Thorburn,
Aye.
Ms. Jazinski,
Aye.
Mr. Malinowski,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. It is approved. Okay, moving on to 6D, and this is really on at my initiative. And is Jim available, Vanessa?
Yes, I brought him over.
Okay. Jim, thank you for joining us. And Jim did not push for this to be on the agenda today. He did call me, I don't know, a week or so ago, telling me why he was anxious to update the job descriptions for the people who work with them, and in fact had submitted the 2 job descriptions you have to the Collins Center for their review. And I just was a little concerned that we'd be getting positions analyzed by the Collins Center for job descriptions that had not yet been approved by the Personnel Board. And I didn't want to be in the situation where they came back and graded these positions, and then the Personnel Board said, well, wait a second, we don't like this, this, or this in the job description, and we find ourselves having to go around and do it. We may have some of that because a number of the job descriptions may be updated, but I suspect most of those will be minor updates. So anyway, that's why we're here now, and I put the responsibility for that on me and not on Jim, but we are here, Jim. So if you'd like to speak about this, the floor is yours.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. What I'm looking to do is to provide the description of what Amy Berry and Kate Battles currently do in the clerk's office. The description of the position that Kate Battles filled was based upon, I believe, a 20-year-old job description from when there was a union here. It was a generic blank description. I mean, just a generic off-the-shelf description. It really didn't cover what they did. This is actually what she does, with one exception. What I would like to, if I can change that job title to assistant town clerk, she will have the legal authority to administer the oath of office to all elected and appointed officials. That's a big deal for us from a scheduling perspective. We tried to get away from having to swear people in for every board and committee, but after discussion with town council, we have to go back to that again. And that creates a heck of a backlog for us at certain times of the year. So if that position title is changed to that, then she is somebody that could administer that oath. And it makes it convenient for people. We've had situations when somebody comes in and there's nobody in the office to do it, and people left their work during the day, and it's kind of a pain in the neck. But there's substantially more responsibility in the position that Kate holds right now, frankly, because of Kate's skill set. And that's the reality of it. We've been able to eliminate many of the clerical aspects of that job. But this is actually what she does right now, with the exception of administering the oath of the office, which is what I'd like to add to her. The second piece of this is to change the title that Amy Berry's position has right now to the deputy town clerk. And that's a title that's used in other towns. Lincoln is an example of a town that uses that right now. And this is what she actually does right now. The only addition thing that she's doing right now that she will be doing starting this month is tracking the expenses in here and matching that against the budgets. So honestly, these are much more responsibilities that these 2 positions had over time. And I'm just very fortunate to have 2 people that can address these. And I'm very, very lucky to work with these 2 people today. As to what grades these come out to be, I have no idea. I'm not making a recommendation that they be one grade or another. I'll leave that to the experts to figure out.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Questions for Jim?
Are we looking to give raises with the change of title in these 2 positions?
I guess that would depend upon what the grading people said. If the grade would change, then that would be appropriate. But again, I don't have a reference or any knowledge to be able to say that something should be grade X or Y. My gut tells me for sure the assistant clerk is a lot more responsibility than the generic version that was used in the past. So my gut would be that one would change. I would probably think that the deputy town clerk wouldn't change. It would just be a title change. But again, that's, I'd leave that to the Collins people to figure that out. or your board, whatever you think. I'm looking to make as accurate as to what they do, and I'm not looking here to finagle something to hit a grade point. I'm not trying to do that.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Other questions?
Is your intent then to adopt these job descriptions today? So then Collins Center will be working with the accurate ones. And then obviously the grading process will come out for all job descriptions, not just these ones at some later point. Is that the plan?
Exactly.
Okay. So I as long as Jim can certify as the department head that all that's written here is what these individuals holding these various positions are doing now. And if it's giving flexibility, given that his office is the most visited or second most visited is my guess in town, I think we need to make sure that the people there have the most capacity and authority to do what that department needs to do. My bigger question that I don't want to spiral this conversation on is, this begs a question: if these job descriptions are 20 years old, what else is Collins Center potentially working with for other positions that have not been fully updated? That's my concern coming out of this. But I fully intend to vote yes on these updated descriptions for the clerk's office. I would just ask that someone maybe look at some of the other ones to just be fair to all the other departments.
Well, and on that point, I think this process will effectively do that because the employee and the managers have all had input in what was submitted to the Collins Center. I think that's why we're having so many interviews, because there are new tasks, new things coming up. And that's why I said at the outset, I think we're going to end up having to approve a number of revisions to job descriptions because they're going to all come out in the process as people have sat down and reviewed their job descriptions. I completely concur that Jim's situation is not unique, that there are other departments who have job descriptions that have remained unchanged for decades. And hopefully we'll get caught in this process, but I could agree completely.
So what I would ask that we do, just in fairness, is if we approve these in a motion, then that Jim also provide the old job descriptions to them, just to say, this is what they were working under. This is what I believe that the prior grading was under. Here's the new one. The personnel board has supported it, just so that we can say to all employees that, it's been fair. I just think that would be the right thing to do, but I strongly support these changes.
Jim, have you reviewed this with the individuals involved?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, and I know you said that these descriptions cover what the employees in those jobs currently do, but if one of them left, would these job descriptions cover exactly what you would want the new employee to do?
That's a great question. And what I have learned in my time here, and we've been, I've had people I've hired here that we have terminated for cause. We've had people that we've had on probation whose performance didn't meet the standard. And what I have learned in my 7 years here is there are good people out there, and I sure as heck would take the time to hire somebody that will be able to fulfill these roles. And if we were to lose one of these people and bring somebody back in, I would hold that new person to these standards and keep looking for more somebody to meet that. I've learned a lot.
Okay. John?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think the assistant town clerk is already in the pay scale as a supervisor and technical staff at grade 6. But I don't see a deputy. That would be an entirely new title.
Yes, that's correct. My gut tells me that the deputy would become that grade 6, and then the new assistant would be a lower grade someplace.
All right, so you've got the assistant town clerk that's presently working at a grade 6, and you're gonna bump her down and put this other person in their place. Where's the assistant going?
No, the assistant will remain, I would expect would remain as a grade 6, but her title would change to deputy town clerk. The person who is as an administrative assistant at grade 3, I think it is, would assume the title of assistant town clerk as whatever grade they make that, 3, 4, whatever they make it, 5, whatever they make it. But nobody's going to get dropped in pay.
Well, that's what I thought. That's what I thought I heard you say, but
Okay. And again, the reason behind that, the title, John, is that if we can make that second person to position or assistant town clerk, they have the legal ability to administer these oaths to other people. And we get slammed certain times of the year with that, and it would help us quite a bit. I mean, it's frustrating when people come in and they take, time off from work and we're not here for whatever reason. It's a pain in the neck, and we have to do this stuff in person now. And, there's a lot of these in a short time frame.
I don't want to be a pain in the neck, but you're gonna have an assistant town clerk and a deputy town clerk both working at grade 6.
No,
You've got,
no, I assume the deputy town clerk will assume the grade 6 position. And I assume the assistant town clerk will be a grade 3 or a 4, something in that range. We're just doing a title change.
Yeah, so it's the assistant town clerk description that's being rewritten as the deputy town clerk. It's that position, and the administrative assistant, if you will, is going to be the assistant town clerk. But under the new grading scale, the assistant town clerk will be, as Jim said, you would expect it to be lower than a 6, but that person who's holding that job now is whatever, a 3. So that person's compensation is not influenced by the fact that it's now shown as a 6. If that makes sense.
We're going to basically change Amy's title to deputy. We're going to take the administrative assistant who's in there, which is Kate's position, and make her assistant town clerk. Jim, are you looking to fill the administrative piece on top of this?
No, I am not.
So we're not going to add a third person to the office.
That is correct.
Okay. Just wondering.
And this wouldn't be effective until we update the SAP. So it wouldn't be effective until 7/1/23. And that's when the grading will figure itself out too. Is that correct?
Yes.
So
Yeah,
you're still
and-
status quo for FY23.
Yes.
Right, and we need to be clear about what we vote on, because we don't suddenly want to give a bump from grade 3 to grade 6 because we've changed this. So we have to make clear that we are approving these job descriptions. It's tricky because the job descriptions, as Jim describes it, accurately describe what they do today. So in one sense, we should be approving the job descriptions effective immediately. But we don't want to be in a situation where we have someone in a position that they're being paid below what the SAP says they should be paid based on the job description, if you follow.
Yeah, do you want me to try, if we're done with discussion, I can try a motion on this.
Sure. Sure.
So I'll move that the personnel board accept the recommendations of the town clerk for the deputy town clerk and the assistant town clerk, with the intent of these job descriptions being effective no earlier than FY24.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, Mr. Thorburn?
Jason, did you say 23?
I said
24.
FY 24 because we're in FY 23.
Okay. Aye.
Mr. Jazinski,
Aye.
Mr. Malinowski,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. It's unanimous. These are approved. Thank you, Jim.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
You too.
Oh, yeah, remember we have early voting here if you want to come in starting
No commercials.
Gotta get a plug in there.
Saturday, July 27.
We're a
It'll be us in a couple of
nonprofit,
weeks.
Jim. We're a nonprofit. Is there any other business that come before the personnel board?
No motion to adjourn.
Well, don't be so quick. Any public comment from our friends in the public? I don't see. We have very few friends. Moving on to the calendar for our next meeting. Usually it would be, we'd be looking at the 14th of September. But Vanessa is otherwise engaged on that day. And we're wondering if people are available on the 13th. And my hope would be, and I'm trying to work around the issues that I talked about at the beginning, that I can be there in person and we can all be there in person for the next meeting. So are people available on the 13th?
I am right now.
13.
Wonderful. So let's schedule the next meeting for September 13th at 9 a.m. With the goal being that it be an in-person meeting, and hopefully we'll be welcoming our fifth member at that meeting. I may have to kill someone to get that done, but it's going to happen. All right,
Thank you very much.
Dorianne,
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Thorburn,
Aye.
Mr. Zinsky,
Aye.
Mr. Malinowski,
Aye.
chair votes aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Hi,
Appreciate it.
everyone.
Have a good day.
You too.